COVID-19 has brought seismic changes in all our lives, and it's literally given the human race new points of view. Lockdown in India, for example, made the Himalaya visible from distances and angles from which it had not been seen since industrial times. Social inequalities have been exposed in ways that have revealed we're not in the same boat, even if we're caught up in the same storm. For many of us, a significantly new viewpoint on the world has been brought through a digital screen. Friends, family, colleagues and fellow worshippers neatly boxed and framed like celebrity squares on our laptops and tablets. And here am I, talking to you. One of the professional challenges brought to me by COVID-19 as a teacher has been the need to translate my preferred embodied pedagogy into digital technologies that, if we're not careful, reduce us all to talking heads. And yet human beings and human communication are about so much more than the cognitive and the verbal. Janet Henderson, a fellow practical theologian with a nursing background, wrote in 2003 that the body is the best learning facility of all. It has thousands of feedback circuits, and the feedback is instantaneous. The body contains more information than all the libraries of the world, for it codifies in its structure and its genes evolutionary experience that goes all the way back to the first living organism. Crucially, when we vacate our bodies, this vast store of information is unavailable to us. So committed to an embodied theology that takes seriously the Incarnation not only as an abstract doctrine, but as the ground for understanding salvation to be something that we experience as bodies and not just as disembodied spirits. I've been evolving over the last 20 years an embodied pedagogy that pays attention to what's happening in our bodies and our imaginations in the higher education classroom, as well as to the critical skills of analysis and debate. In teaching, for example, Walter Brueggemann's interpretation of Isaiah's concepts of Babylon, home and exile, I invite students to work together to choose cloths and objects to represent each of these states on the basis of the reading they've done, and then in groups to visit each space they've created. There I ask them to become aware of and share what they're feeling, what tastes and smells and music have come to mind in each space, what physical sensations they're experiencing. In locating themselves in different topographies and in becoming aware of their emotions and physical states, students were able to make far deeper connections between these biblical motifs and their own daily lives than most could from the page alone. And they were consequently able to make better sense not only of Brueggemann's analysis of American culture, but of the resonances for their own lives and communities of the rich concepts of Babylon, home and exile. Used to operating in this way with a toolkit of cloths and objects and in large rooms with flexible layouts, working online initially felt like an exile of my own, teaching with both hands tied behind my back. I missed being able to set out a piece of theory on the floor and invite students to inhabit it and play with it. I missed being able to walk through the structures I'd made and feel myself what I was talking about. I missed the spontaneity of banter and of coffee breaks and of being able to read the room through a myriad of tiny physical clues. I knew that I was still a body, communicating with other bodies, and yet I was so tense that I would teach for several hours without checking in with my own body, something I know it's important to do if I'm not to miss what's going on in a classroom. In some ways I could see students better, there is nowhere to hide, and I could even see myself mirrored back to me on the screen, but I found myself distracted by my own image, constantly watching my own performance as if disembodiedly watching someone else. And initially this way of seeing was blinding. I've since learned to switch off self-view and so enter the space in a much less self-conscious way. I've learned too how to translate many of the tools of the embodied classroom into the digital classroom and to invite students to spend regular time away from the screen, working on a range of drawing, writing and embodied exercises and sharing what emerges. In the courses on pastoral supervision that I've been adapting, for example, we've developed the practice of beginning with embodied prayer exercises. In the model of pastoral supervision we teach, as the focus of the session is agreed, we've introduced the question, and how will you feel in your body if we make the progress you hope to make in this session? As a way of helping those we supervise access the wisdom of their own bodies, even though we as supervisors on the other side of the screen may only be able to see a talking head. We're learning too in these groups how to form new learning communities of people who've not met in person. But this has involved thinking outside of the boxes in which we are each framed and finding ways to reach out of them. In the physical classroom, we would throw softballs and play games that promote the making of a group matrix, increasing interactions in the group and spontaneity and whole group awareness. But online, we've needed to develop new games, find ways of people literally passing objects through the screen to one another, or high-fiving in groups towards the camera. Initially awkward, this has turned out to be fun, and has felt literally like it's allowed thinking and relating outside the four walls of each screen, and outside the four walks of each room in which our screens and our lives are increasingly confined. The drive to break out of our individual cells is also grounded in a theology of the body, though in a different sense. Christians understand themselves as part of the body of Christ, intimately connected with each other through Christ the head, and needing incarnate ligaments and sinews, means of communication and means of grace, to hold us together and to Him. Other disciplines than theology have much to say about the way in which human beings are social and need social interaction to be healthy, and are exploring the ways in which the development of adolescents, for example, who do not have bodily ways to connect with peers but who interact primarily with each other on screen, is being affected. COVID-19 may help us see much more quickly what the impact is upon the human being of living a digital life, whilst at the same time making it more necessary for us to learn to live this better. No one anymore thinks that a post-COVID world will get back to an old normal, even if we're not clear what any new normal might look like or how long it might take to get there. I'm certain that more human interaction on screen is here to stay, and that our global carbon footprint, and perhaps other things, will be better for it. I'm certain too, though, that digital technologies push us towards ways of seeing that can cut us off from some of our deepest wisdom as human beings, and that we shall need to keep on remembering and finding ways to connect as bodies and as communities if we want to thrive and not just survive. So to finish, perhaps you would high-five me, or share with me this Makaton sign for peace. Peace be with you.